Hey guys, welcome to part one of how to not flop MUN, which is a model UN bootcamp.
I'm gonna introduce myself first. I'm Bernice, and I'm the Deputy Secretary General of SONMUN.
I am Cheng. I'm the Sec Gen. I am a deep seek defender and I'm lactose intolerant. We're both SON class of 27. So if you are the next Sec Gen and next Deputy Secretary General of SON and MUN, we are here to show you how it's done.
Guide. So before we hold your hands and guide you step by step, there's a preface. Okay, so every MUN is run differently, and there's no right or wrong, but there are best practices you should do to avoid mistakes, which you can learn in this bootcamp.
Okay, so what even is Model UN? Why should you care? Model UN is an educational simulation of the actual UN. So that means you're pretending to be UN officials, and for like maybe 2 days, 3 days, I don't know how long you guys want to make it, you can pretend to be in charge of the world. It is very popular in some countries, like the US and China, and it is less popular in some, including Macau, which is why we want you to kind of, start an MUN culture here. On to you, Bernice.
Right. So actually, this guide isn't like limited to just our school. For anyone who is watching this outside of our school organization, you could also take this as like a tutorial. Yeah. So this tutorial has some basic stages that we're going to explain about. First of all, there's gonna be pre-conference prep and communication, which is basically one of the biggest part that you want to have like a foundation for, so you don't like mess up later, you don't flop. Like that's the whole main thing about our presentation is to hope that this guide will provide enough details so you don't flop. And then we have opening conference programming. There's a debate and MUN action. That's the practical view, like where the delegates, the chairs, they go into action. But we'll go into detail for that. There's also post conference programming. So yeah, those are the basic stages. On to you, Chingsen.
So here is a basic preparation timeline. As Bernice mentioned in previous slides, you do not have to specifically follow what we have established. You can kind of mix things up. You can do things depending on what you prefer. But this is how we do it. First, we do chair training. We familiarize ourselves with our rules of procedure. And after everyone is a bit familiar with what an MUN conference is, we move on to assembling a team, which I feel like you guys may have done. We draft delegate resources, stuff like their delegate guide, their position paper guide, their traveling guide for international delegations. It's basically just anything you want to include for the delegates. And in this time period, which is about 1 or 2 months away from where you first started at MUN, we market our conference. So we go on Instagram, Facebook, um, Google. We like post about it. We talk to people about MUN. We promote it. So that's what we do. And then after that, registration opens, right? So then you can move on to budget. You can communicate with delegates, understand their needs, and we can also configure software. And when registration finally closes, and there is about a 2 or 3 month period where you can prepare for MUN, that is where everything comes together. So a more detailed PDF will actually be provided for you in our resources folder.
Video. And also I want to add on to about the timeline that we propose, or like just like a simple guide. Like sometimes big MUNs, they take like maybe half a year to promote. They have like a
Yeah.
website established, or like they're just a bigger organization going on. There's like multiple teams, but obviously adapted to how you would like to go with. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's like extremely personal.
Mm-hmm. All right, so there's these procedures that I think is very important when you want to establish the basis, because it determines whether delegates get awards or it's just simply a simulation that is focused on, like, for example, teamwork, cooperation. So Model UN is not Model UN without its procedures, right? So in THIMUN, it's popular in Europe and it focuses more on writing resolutions. There are no awards, and the philosophy of diplomacy and teamwork are more promoted over winning. Like for example, racing for best delegate, getting as much points, or be more active in the conference. It doesn't mean that you cannot be active. It's just that there are a lot of delegates that participate in, for example, say UN USA, would like to they're very competitive, but THIMUN just wants to focus more on the spirit of it whole. Okay, so UN USA, it's more popular in the US, but actually it's more popular in most like Asian regions as well. They require position papers, most of them, and they have awards like best delegate. There's also best outstanding speaker. There's honorable mentions, and there's like other awards you can include if your committee and like your entire organization is big. And there's some points that you can also make, like for example, say like point of personal privilege that happens within the practical field, like when the committee or conference starts, right? You can have these kind of points, and it's also quite flexible and can be changed for its target audience. For example, you can have like beginners or intermediate or advanced, right? So back to you, Shingson.
Okay. So here's the neat part, making your own procedures. We don't typically recommend conferences to do this if it's your first time, but if you're a reasonably sized conference, your secretariat is reasonably experienced, you can alter some rules to make it fit your own needs. On to you, Bernice.
All right, so some of the suggestions that we give is you should use positive language and try to avoid do nots, because things can be flexible. Like it's just the way you word. Like for example, if you are a position that has authority, like the chair in within like the conference, you want to encourage like a more active spirit within the conference. So try to be more positive. Also have some diagrams when you, like for example, say present a beginners or training session before the conference. For example, say have flow charts for how each procedure flows, because um, certainly there are main parts to how a actual conference goes, but there's also like a lot of details that should be like branched out from each main part. So a flowchart is good. Keep the language simple to minimize confusion. Just be straightforward. Yeah, and then there's also being consistent for your rules, like the logic. It should flow without like any obstruction. Like for example, say resolutions should undergo a second voting procedure in order to determine its final verdict. That's how it usually goes with other procedures. Like if you're gonna make your own procedures, uh, try very much try to reference previous more successful procedures. And there's also immune vocabularies that should be defined clearly. For example, say if a delegate asks us about it, the chair should be familiar with these vocabularies. Also, lastly, you should proofread, revise, and also edit your procedures. Yeah.
So this is an example of how a typical rules of procedure document would look like. This is taken from SON MUN 2024, which if you go to SON, it was our first MUN conference. So typically it would include a code of conduct, how delegates should behave. It should also include procedural descriptions, such as if you use time in or use UNA, USA, you should make that clear. We also
Mhm.
include a free template. If you just click in the link of our description, you can get started without all of the hassle, which we had to go through. Back to you, Bernice.
All right. So there are some delegate training programs, as mentioned. Are they really necessary? How should I be supporting my delegates? So sometimes it can be conducted online or in person as part of a conference programming. So it's for beginners, right? SON MUN, personally, is committed to helping beginner delegates due to our current demographic of our community. So it depends on like what region or cities you're at. You know, like you can see how the schools, if their MUNs are popular, maybe a beginner's training session isn't required. But sometimes, for example, say if you're hosting a more higher difficulty MUNs, you could like give a crisis training programs. But those are more advanced level. Many high-level conferences offer workshops or basic training curriculums for beginner delegates. So, for example, HMUN's training series, there's it's also very helpful if you wish to introduce your own procedure instead of using popular ROPs. Okay, so back to Shinsen.
Um, we would also like to include some extra notes. Do keep in mind these tips aren't entirely holistic to all aspects. So that just means you shouldn't take these tips too seriously. Take it with a grain of salt. This is what worked for us. It might not work for you. So it's all about finding a balance in what works for your environment. And yeah. You should use the default procedures if you're more familiar with it. It saves time for other steps and you can reference other procedures as long as credit is given and is logical. Lastly, enjoy the process and have fun. That is the most important part of an MUN.
Woo! All right. So, some of our tips on starting your MUN journey. I think Jinsen should probably go with her part. Is that
Oh,
right?
yeah. My first tip is that you should start small, be ambitious, but also know the limits of your community. So this came from our first conference because Macau isn't a very big region. Not many people are very interested in such a niche activity. So if you're dreaming of a conference that's like 600,000 people big, or like, okay, maybe not 600,000, but like 6,000 people, like that probably wouldn't happen in an environment like us. So you should try to start small. The best MUNs adapt to local culture and interest. So this is something that we learned when we went abroad to Taiwan for our first MUN trip. We noticed that the Taiwan conference specifically held some committees that were focused on Taiwanese politics. So this is a great way to get local interest involved and also to help students and delegates, be familiar with their own systems and not necessarily, um, you know, prioritize other systems that are not your own. And finally, you should ask for help. That is the most important part because starting an MU1 conference is not easy. You have to know what to do, and that can be a lot of pressure. You should seek help in your teachers, seek help in your classmates, maybe even search online on advice on what you should do. So let's go on to Bernice's tips.
Yeah, so I think Chingsen's like advice is very crucial. Yeah, it's like more focused on like your culture and your demographic and stuff. So mine is just more general advice. It's like to prioritize organization and time management. Those are very, very important because in an MUN team, right? If you're gonna have to manage or delegate a team, there's a lot of departments you have to slot them through, and it's hard to like keep track of everything else. So keep everything organized. Like put folders in like a big shared Google Drive, or you should probably plan a timeline and also talk to your teammates often. Like you have to have a like meeting, at least a mandatory meeting to go through things so it runs smoothly and it's efficient, right? So use the free resources because it will save you a lot of headaches. Like
Link.
always ask for periodic feedback. That is that's something that you want because not just from your teammates but also during the conference you should ask like after the conference you could give out like surveys to the delegates for them to reflect on how your organization, your accommodation going, like that helps you prepare way better for your next conference. You should also not you shouldn't be afraid to rely on your teammates because they are going to be there saving anything that you mess up. Okay, they are going to be one of your biggest supporting pillars throughout this conference because it will be chaotic if it's your first one. Well, not will if you organize it well, but yeah. And most importantly, have fun in the process. Don't stress too much if it's perfect. Something's okay. Like if you're going to be hosting a debate a debate simulation, nothing will come out as like a certain result. Yeah, back to Chingson.
So this is the end of part one. Check back later for part two. We have free resources, as we have mentioned, to kickstart your MUN in our description. It is a Google Drive folder, and in order to get the password and access to it, you have to watch our whole entire bootcamp. But it's
Woo!
worth it. It's free, and it really helped us when we were starting our MUN. So we think it will help you.
Yeah, it will save you like at least a month's worth of preparation. Mhm.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye. Check our next
Bye.
video. Don't
Watch
skip
our
it
next
out.
video, yeah.